In this video, I dissect Scott Ritter's high-level military analysis of Hamas's hidden victory and military objectives, Netanyahu's fate, and clarifying some pervasive lies in the media. Let's go.
No one can do it better.
A serious religious leader, in addition to being, one of the most important politicians in Lebanon. Never forget that HEZBOLLAH is a political party that's heavily vested in the success of Lebanon as a nation state. Therefore, he has to take into consideration the entire Lebanese nation. He's not going to do something that sacrifices Lebanon for the sake of some Islamic gimmick, because that's what it would be, a gimmick. If you listen to his speech last Friday, this was a very serious man who gave one of the most comprehensive presentations regarding horizontal escalation management. Now, that's me imposing Western academic concepts onto a speech given by a very important regional leader. But that's exactly what he did. He was talking about escalation management done horizontally, meaning it wasn't just managing Hezbollah's relationship with Israel, it was managing Hezbollah's relationship with Hamas, Iran, the United States, how all these things interacted together. And, he gave a speech that basically said that his goal is to avoid an escalation of the conflict. He was prepared to come in if needed, but to avoid it. And I would imagine that his speech tomorrow will be more of the same, continuing to manage the varying degrees of escalation that have taken place since his last speech, refamiliarizing the Americans and the Israelis about the potential of Hezbollah to be a game changer. But again, I just remind people, now this is where I get in trouble. This is the beginning of the getting in trouble night now. Hamas has scored a major victory, a huge victory. And all the people going, Scott, I don't see a victory there in Gaza, man. The former head of Israeli intelligence just came out and said, it ain't going on like you guys think it's going on in the media. Hamas ain't beat. They're putting up a hell of a resistance, and Israel's not having an easy time. But more important than that, Israel's losing the international relations battle. You have the United States, you have every ambassador in the Middle East sending emergency cables to the White House and to the State Department saying, we've lost the Arab street, we've lost the Arab world for at least a generation and maybe forever because of what we're doing. And this is going to overly complicate our lives going down. All the things we think should be happening aren't going to be happening because they aren't with us anymore because of Israel. And this is in turn going to cause the United States to put pressure on Israel. For all those people that listen to Benjamin Netanyahu, understand this. He's a failed leader, and he's on his way out. Everything he says doesn't matter, literally doesn't matter. It may have an importance for today, for the present, but in the long term, all the projections he makes about this, that, the other thing, we're going to destroy Hamas, we're going to be in God. He won't be here to do that because he is literally collapsing as we speak, internally and in terms of external pressure. He is seen as the biggest impediment to resolving this conflict that's there, and he's going to be pressured out. But let's look at some of the things he said. He said that Hamas will be destroyed. Well, as I said, the former head of Israeli intelligence just said, well, if they're going to be destroyed, Israel ain't destroying them. So got to do better there, Benny. Then he, said other things that, there will not be a ceasefire. There will not be a ceasefire. I think there's going to be a ceasefire. And, he said, we won't release we're not going to negotiate. It's all or nothing. I think, guess what? You're going to, I think Hamas is going to give you about 100 of their hostages, and you're going to release all the women and children. I want people to reflect on what I just said, that Israel's going to release all the women and children that they've arrested. Aren't they nice, fuzzy people? Because the women and children haven't been charged with any crimes. They've just been pulled off the street because they don't like the Israelis occupying the West Bank. Some of the kids, 10-year-old kids, threw rocks at tanks. Man, that's worth shooting them. Sometimes they do. They kill a lot of 10-year-old kids who throw rocks at tanks. Sometimes they capture them and snap their arms. You know, the little tiny 10-year-old arms that threw the rock, they break them, and then they take the crying kid to prison where they don't set the arm properly so he can never throw rocks properly again. Those people are in prison. Thousands of them are in prison. Hundreds of children, over 136, I believe, and thousands of women are in prison in Israel. No due process, no nothing, just in prison. You guys probably didn't think about that when people said, why would Hamas take hostages? Didn't we just answer that question? Because they're using them to exchange for their hostages that have been taken by the Israelis. Benjamin Netanyahu said they would never be exchanged. There's an exchange taking place. Why? Because Hamas is smarter than Benjamin Netanyahu. They planned this. One of their goals, one of their objectives was to go and seize hostages to get these people released. And let me predict the future for you. They're going to get all the prisoners released, and they'll release all the hostages. That's their plan. That's what's going to happen. It may take some time. There's going to be some death and destruction going on, but that's what's going to happen. But let me tell you the other thing that's happening that shows that this is one of the greatest victories for Hamas ever. On October 6th, no one was talking about a Palestinian state. It was a dead issue. Done. No one talking about it. No one cared about it except the Palestinians. And even then, which Palestinians? Not, Abbas, the president of Palestinian Authority. He's a total sellout to the Israelis, to the Americans, etc. Palestinian Authority doesn't care. Fatah had sold out a long time ago. The only people that cared were Hamas. Hamas is the only organization that really wanted a Palestinian state. And what did they do? They launched the most successful military raid in modern history. It wasn't an act of terrorism. There was nothing terroristic about what Hamas did. Hamas launched a military raid. Look at the definition of the military raid. One of the things that military raids do is take prisoners. Hamas certainly did that. Surprise attack to gather intelligence. They did that too. A surprise attack to destroy enemy capability. They did that too. And a raid always has a retrograde, which Hamas did, retreating with their hostages back to a prepared defensive position, another trait of a military raid where they awaited the enemy response, hopefully luring them into an ambush, which is exactly what happened. But it's not just the military victory that Hamas has a right to celebrate, and they will. I'm just telling you right now, people for years and years and years are going to be studying this as one of the greatest military raids of modern history, because it was the greatest military raid of modern history. There ain't nothing to compete with what happened on October 7th. And it wasn't an act of terrorism, people. 1,400 dead. It's been down to 1,200. I'm not being too picky on the cat. It's still a lot of people. But fully a third of those or more were military. And of the remaining, it turns out the Israelis killed about 80% of them. So don't blame Hamas. Blame the Israeli Defense Force. They're the ones that took the Apache helicopters to the rave in the desert and shot up all the vehicles. You know, the vehicles the Israeli government was showing you, all the burned out vehicles. Look what Hamas did. Look what. No. It was the Apache helicopters flown by Israeli pilots who didn't know who was good or bad on the ground, so they killed everybody. Literally killed everybody. They're the ones who killed all those people. Now, Hamas killed some too. There was some fighting, crossfiring. People hide into bunkers. Hey, you know what you do when you clear a bunker? You throw a grenade in the bunker. Hamas threw a lot of grenades in the bunkers full of civilians. They died. Guess who else did that? American troops. Read about the taking of the city of Aachen by the American troops as we went in street by street. When we went into a building where there was a sniper, we cleared room by room by room by room. And you'll read the accounts. They throw in a grenade first. They come in, spray it down. And it was a family of 12 there, all civilians, all dead. Tough noogies. I mean, no one celebrates it, but it's just called war. Those people were in the wrong place on a bad day to have a psychedelic rave. But the vast majority were killed by the Israelis, not by Hamas. The same thing. They talk about the Kibbutz Reim massacre. 112 civilians murdered by Hamas. They raped the women. They beheaded the children. They burned the bodies. They didn't do any such thing. I think the Israeli government, in addition to admitting that there were no beheaded children, they made that up, have now admitted there's no raped women. Hamas didn't rape anybody. And the burned bodies, they were burned by the Israelis who fired main take rounds into a building, collapsed it, breaking the gas line, causing the building catch on fire, and everybody inside dies. Did Hamas kill some people? Absolutely. But again, I want to remind people, the kibbutzes around Gaza, They're not mom and pa dairy farms, guys. They're militarized neighborhoods. Each one of them has a dedicated security force that has been given weapons, and they have a job to mobilize and fight. So when Hamas is coming across doing their military raid, they have to treat each kibbutz as a military target capable of mounting an effective defense. And guess what? On occasion, a couple of the kibbutzes got their guys out in time, and they were able to repel the Hamas assault. So had Hamas rolled in slowly and properly and politely, knocked on the door, rang it, look up at the, what's that camera thing in the ring thing? Hi, it's Hamas. Open the door. We're here. They'd have died. They assaulted through, as you do with any military target, and you treat buildings. They had all the lists of who on the security teams were. And when they went in and they saw movement, until they could confirm, they had to treat as military, and they shot, and they killed dozens of Israelis this way. There's no doubt about that. But the vast majority of the 112 people who died in Reem kibbutz were killed by the Israeli Defense Force, especially not on October 7th, but on October 8th, even in the morning of October 9th, because the Hamas guys were pinned in buildings with hostages. They were actually on the phone with the Israeli forces. The hostages were saying, hey, Hamas wants to surrender. They're talking about giving up, guys. How about doing it? Nope. Boom, boom, boom. Main tank rounds in, killed everybody. The one lady who gave an interview said there were 40 Hamas guys, about 18 of us. When it was all done, all the Hamas guys are dead or captured, and 16 of the 18 hostages were dead, killed by the Israelis. So let's stop this nonsense. This was terrorism. It was not terrorism. But what came out of this? Everybody's talking about a Palestinian state today. Everybody. So we need to understand this, that there will be a Palestinian state. Optimism is there. Tony Blinken just said it's the number one diplomatic priority of the United States right now. The only reason they're talking about, and I'd love to ask Tony that question. Hey, Tony, understand you. Can I call you Tony? Or do you want me to call you? We'll just call you Tony. Hey, Tony, you just said it's the number one priority of the United States. That means it's something that you support. I support the Palestinian state. Did you support the Palestinian state on October 6th? Was it the number one priority of the United States then? Well, no, it wasn't, right? It wasn't. You weren't even thinking about it, right? No. So what made you think about it? Did Benjamin Netanyahu call you up and say Israel supports a Palestinian state and we'd like our good friends Americans to do that? Well, no. You know what caused you to do this? Hamas's attack. Hamas's attack pushed you to do the right thing. So we have to stop viewing the Hamas attack as an act of terrorism. It wasn't. It was a well-planned, well-executed military raid that had distinct political objectives, number one of which was the creation of a Palestinian state. And they're succeeding. It's happening. It never would have happened without this attack. And they're getting the hostages released. Those Palestinians that the Israelis captured. They're doing that. And when this is all said and done, the third major objective will be obtained too. The sanctity of the Al-Aqsa Mosque will be guaranteed. I guarantee you going forward, that's part of the two-state solution, by the way, because that part of Jerusalem now will become Palestine. That's going to be sort of contentious because it's right next to the Wailing Wall, but they'll work it out. There's no reason for them not to. But the point is, Hamas has done a glorious thing if you're a Palestinian. That's why I'm tired of all these, people being called anti-Semitic. Why is it anti-Semitic to actually promote statehood for Semitic people, by the way? The Palestinians are Semites.
High-level explanation from Scott Ritter there. He explains how Hezbollah is also a political party inside of Lebanon, and how Nasrallah is thinking about Lebanon before he takes action because he wants to protect the people of Lebanon as well. You can also see that speech on my channel, that full speech that Nasrallah gave, that apocalyptic speech on my channel. Then Scott Ritter goes on and talks about how Hamas achieved some very intricate military objectives. One was by now the Palestinian state is back on the table. Remember, nobody's been talking about that for a long time now. They've just been letting that ride the way it is. And he says that Hamas executed the most successful military raid that they've ever had. And he says as well that it wasn't terrorism. And the reason why he says that is because they're an occupied people. So they're fighting for their freedom. That's very simple. He says Hamas also gathered information and destroyed a lot of military capabilities of Israel. Then he speaks about Israel and Netanyahu, saying Israel is definitely losing the public relations battle. They are, when you see these babies, and these children getting killed and pulled out of the rubble, and the women and children. I mean, the pictures are horrifying, you guys. I can't even show it. A lot of the things that I'm seeing on my channel, I mean, it's haunting. Let's put it like that. The images are haunting. So that's why they're losing the public relations battle. And the Western governments, including the United States, are saying that we've lost a generation of the Arab nation, or maybe even all of the Arab nations forever, because they obviously don't trust us. They see that we're killing these Palestinians, that genocide is going on, so they don't trust us. And it's not the first time that these countries have backstabbed people in terms of deals and negotiations that they have made. He says Netanyahu is a failed leader and that Netanyahu has to go, that his days are numbered. And I'll add on to that, Netanyahu is also a liar. And one of the other objectives that I missed from Hamas that they're achieving is that Scott says that they're going to end up getting all of the women and children released from these Israel jails, because remember, they're being held there without charges, with no due process. The age of accountability there is 12 years old, so they got all these children inside of those Israeli jails. I've got a video on that on my channel that you must see, with the children in jail, hostages of another name. Then he also says, which I thought was very interesting, he says that the Israeli Apache helicopters are the ones that killed a bunch of those people at that concert, because they didn't know who was good or who was bad. And that's a part of the strategy of Israel. They'll take you out. That's why they're not doing much to try to get these hostages out, because those are bargaining chips, and Israel will take out their own people if it furthers their military mission against Palestine having freedom. All praises to the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is Crown Prince Media. I am the Crown Prince. Let's go.
No one can do it better.